Hi, everyone. It's me, Kristie Clayton. I'm so excited to be here with Conversations with Kristie with Nicole Mennicke. Y'all, if you don't know me, as I said, I'm Kristie Clayton. I am the founder of HERverse. HER is an acronym for Helping Executives Rise. And we do that in 3 ways. We have a community for women second in command leaders. That is absolutely incredible. We just had our summit that I can't wait to share more about. We also have a second community for leadership team members. And then we do coaching for visionary CEOs, integrator second in commands, and leadership team members. So that is who we are. Nicole, share with us who you are.
Hello, Kristie. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I am a fractional integrator with Catalyst Integrators. I'm also a coach. I'm a Kolbe certified coach, Lead Now coach, and I'm a speaker, which actually I was finished up my closing keynote at the FIM Summit and I left so full. So that is me in a nutshell. I'm excited to be here talking with you today.
Oh, I'm so excited too. When I first started thinking about the possibility of doing, this conversations and LinkedIn lives, and I was thinking through like who everybody I would want to come and talk, your name was at the top of the list. And I was just like, oh, I can't wait to have this conversation. So many people have said to me, gosh, I wish our conversations were recorded so other people could enjoy them. And there's been so many times I felt that with us because we get deep into stuff. So
Absolutely.
There is something that you talk about a lot, and you've talked about at summits before, and you share with the FEM community that I am so excited to talk with you about. And that is the Visionary-Integrator, or listen, there's plethora of titles we use for both of those roles: CEO, COO, president, vice president. It doesn't matter what title you're using, but those 2 roles. And the seasons that they go through, because it's not all hunky-dory all the time. So I'd love for you to share that, your personal experience through that, and what those seasons look like.
Oh, I love that. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And actually, what I love about it most is the seasons that we talk about don't just apply to the visionary integrator relationship. It really applies to teams. And so that's really a focus, is team health. And team health starts at that visionary integrator relationship, whatever you call it, first and second in command relationship. So I have been operating on the entrepreneurial operating system for 14 years. And so full-time with RocketClick's Tyler, and he was my first visionary. And so we were visionary integrator duo for about 12 years. And he actually helped build a lot of this content with me. And it was through trial and error. As you know, you kind of figure it out as you go. But really, we identified 4 key seasons. And what I love about the word seasons is cyclical. You aren't climbing a mountaintop and arriving. There's no arrival point, which can be kind of deflating at some points. But honestly, what's beautiful about it is the seasons, you keep moving through the seasons. So the 4 seasons that I talk a lot about is, the first one is embrace the suck. Right? Just there's suck in relationships, especially when they're new, or you'll find out later when you loop around the other part of the season. But it's really just being intentional and really fostering that relationship, saying, okay, we are in this together. It's going to stink, but we're going to pull through it. The second phase is building that trust with them. And that is just really intentional time and thoughtful time, connecting as humans, right? Seeing beyond the title and seeing each other as humans. Because then when you really build trust and things start moving, you ride high. And that's that 3rd season. And we all love being in the ride high. And that's really what we hope for, is to stay in that ride high. And there are a lot of strategies to keep us in that phase. But what will happen is a stumble. And the 4th season is enduring the stumble. And we will go through the cycle the whole time. And what's tough is people say, well, once I've ridden high and we have a stumble, I can go right back. No, you have to really start it over. You got to embrace the suck again. You got to rebuild the trust to really be in that ride high. And so it's having strategies and tools, communication strategies, knowing yourself. And that's a lot what I talk to. It's not just how you communicate with the other person. It's how you communicate with yourself, because your head noise changes through those seasons significantly. And so acknowledging, hey, we're in a stinky season right now, but there's a new season next if we put in the right time and effort. So that's really the seasons in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. Can you talk through some of the seasons though, and like some of the feelings and how to work? Like to me, the hardest one is embracing the suck, right? And because it sucks. Like, it does suck. But, if you really truly want a healthy relationship, which is really vital for the organization as a whole, because what happens at the top is what does filter down, right? So if you want to embrace the suck and really get to that next season, what are some ways that people can do that?
Yeah. Embracing the suck has so much self-awareness, right? It's one of the things that I spoke to at Summit is celebrating your story and standing really strong in that story, and not telling the world what you're demanding from it, but telling the world what you're demanding from yourself. And so like getting really clear on the things that you prioritize, your personal guiding principles, your values, and how you can communicate them without it sounding like a demand list. And so that embrace the suck. I mean, yes, it starts to lead into building trust, but when we both can be in that space, the stink, and we can say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I value, but then reaching across the table and saying, what do you value? One of my favorite stories is one of my visionaries had so much conflict and we just kept butting heads nonstop and we couldn't figure it out. And I went through an exercise with him and I had him list his motivators. So we took 15 shared motivators. I ranked mine, he ranked his. And when we put them side by side, we actually saw our top motivators conflicted with our bottom motivators. So the decision-making and the thought process and the why behind some of these decisions and choices was to satisfy the motivators, but not even realizing that it was actually hurting the other person. And so without that moment of self-reflection and really intentionally getting out of working in it and focusing on it, we were able to see, okay, how can we both win? How can we both get what's important to us accomplished? So that's my favorite of the embrace the suck, is just a self-awareness and a sharing.
Well, and it's important, really, like, to me, the embrace the suck it's about so much more, right? Because these are typically two very different personality types. And that's what you want in order for this to be a really successful, duo. But it does create a lot of, conflict, tension, mistrust. Sometimes we say things that is misinterpreted, so it can all happen. But working through that, I think, is really important.
I have a personal story just the other day. So I became Kolbe certified a couple of weeks ago. And I did a read back with my entire family. So my husband and my two sons, and I have a 13 and an 11-year-old. And so I had them take the Kolbe. And so I did a family read back session on our TV in our living room. And I personally had a huge moment because myself, my husband, and my oldest son are very high fact finders and very high follow through, which means we like structure and plans. We ask a lot of questions. And what I found was my 11-year-old was very low, like a 3, 4 on the same thing. And so it totally shook me because I, for a living, support visionaries, which often have that same makeup, and I celebrate them and I bring all of their ideas to the table and I help them sort through it. And I'm so patient and I'm grateful. But then I realized I wasn't doing it with my own kid. Like I wasn't even giving my son that space to be a high quick start and give a lot of ideas. Or maybe he doesn't want to follow my 20-point checklist after school chores, right? And so much of that goes back to the visionary-integrator relationship. Just because they don't think the way you think or need the same things that you need when you're making problems doesn't mean they think wrong or bad. It's just, how can you find where it complements each other?
Yes, I say that all the time. It's not right and wrong. It's just different. And how do you navigate through that? I mean, you're right. Earlier you said, it's leadership and life in general is not a destination, right? It's not to make it to the pinnacle of the summit, but it's a journey and it's an exploration of what we get to do together. And I think that's the beauty of this particular duo, is there's a lot of exploring you can do, and you can really truly get to know one another. And it's important that you do too. I know one of our goals that I've always had with my visionaries I've worked with is, if our team members are walking down the hallway and they run into you or they run into me and they ask a question, I want both of us to have the same answer for them, right? But it takes these moments of like getting to know each other, and not just the business, right, Nicole? Like, it's not just knowing and understanding what we're doing as a business, but who are we as individuals, and how do we respond to things? How do we react to things so that we can make sure that we are aligned and coming together with answers, with, with ideas, instead of creating conflict or chaos with, I'm intentionally going to go to one or the other because I know that they're going to answer the way that I want them to, right?
Absolutely. And like the power of the same page. 100% of the time when I fall out of whack with my visionary, I can almost guarantee you it's because we haven't had consistent meeting pulse. And we haven't had not just aligning on how we feel and what we think, but aligning as humans. Like, did you know my kid was sick last week? Did I know that you guys are going through some stuff in your marriage right now that's impacting the way you're showing up? Mm-hmm. And so, yes, there's a boundary setting between the two roles because it's still very much professional. But on a personal level, in order for us to understand how we're showing up day to day, we can't separate our personal from professional worlds. And we have to have that space to connect.
Exactly. I don't know about you, but one of the things I do in my same page meetings is I love to open it. I love that in our leadership team meetings, we start with good personal, good professional. It's amazing. I love hearing that. But when I start a same page meeting, I ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you today? Where's your head, your heart, and your body? And because I need to know the real stuff, right? Not just the pretty stuff, but tell me what's really going on. So I love to start with that. On a scale of 1 to 10, where is your head, your heart, and your body? And no sevens. I know that's your.
I call it safe 7. One of my, I holler at one of my clients because he calls it the shame 7. I was like, we're not shaming the 7. We're just calling it out as a safe 7.
So explain that a little bit. So, because we both know what you're talking about, but
I love that.
On a scale of 1 to care is such a big, thing for you. And why is 7 such a big deal?
Yes, I love that. Okay, so I got the silliest Christmas gift for my clients. Hopefully they're not watching. But so this is a scale of 1 to care. I trademarked it. So this is a block where it's like, don't beat a dead horse, sacred cow. How fun is that? But the scale of 1 to care. And this actually came out, I shared this story before, but Visionary was just hounding me about the color of the logo and the color. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, why are we fighting over this color? And finally, I just said, hold on a scale of 1 to care, how much does this mean to you? And he's like, it's a 9. And I'm like, whoa, help me understand that. Well, if we can't brand ourselves appropriately, how is anyone else going to expect us to do the same with their business? And I said, okay, I now understand your care. It still is a 2 for me. I don't care. But now I can accept that and appreciate that. And so I use that scale of 1 to care, just kind of what you said, like on a scale, help me understand, because what it does is it avoids questions like, are you okay? Do you understand? Are you comfortable? That's yes and no. That's closed-ended. What the scale does is create this gray space for us to engage in real dialogue. And one of my superpowers is as soon as somebody starts engaging in that gray space, we are plucking issues out left and right. We have dozens of issues going all over the organization that wouldn't have happened if I said, "How are you doing today?" Right? That just that closed-ended approach.
Exactly. And why no 7s? Like, why is 7?
So tell me the last time you went to a restaurant and you were just not happy. I mean, it wasn't terrible where you're writing into some federal government, but it was just bad, right? And you didn't want to even give them the time of day to give them great feedback. On a survey, you're going to say, that was a 7, right? It just feels right there in the middle. And what I say is there's a ton of difference between 6 and 8. I feel like the gap between 6 and 8 is bigger than any other number on that scale, because 7 puts us in this space where I've graded it just high enough where maybe you won't ask questions, but just low enough so I'm telling you there's something wrong with it, right? So to choose a 6 or an 8, you really are saying and sharing a ton.
Yeah. I mean, you were really picking like this went well or this did not go well, right? And I love that. Yeah. I don't know if you know, but I always said no 7s too. I wasn't clear in my definition as you were, but you're right. Like 7 is just it's an easy number because I'm hoping you won't say anything.
But I need you to know there's something.
Yes. I need you to know it wasn't as great as it could be. So I love that. And I use that all the time too.
Oh, that means a lot.
So talk about the next season though, like that next season of building trust, and how do you do that, especially when you're, well, and I guess two things, especially when you're like new in a relationship, but also what if you've broken trust and now you're reestablishing? Like, what are some things that people can do?
Yeah. I am a queen of assessments, and not to label. I think that's my biggest thing is often people feel like I get an assessment result and now I am this wizard and I know everything about you and your personality. And I think I think it can be weaponized and abused. And I see a lot of people really resistant to assessments for that reason. But what the beauty of assessments is, and what I've always really done with my teams is I will share mine first so that I'm modeling that vulnerability and that openness. And then I say, I want to see yours next to mine so that we can work through how our differences actually support us in decision making, but how they're going to get in the way. If I'm a really low, so I'm a 1 quick start. It's kind of why I still don't, I believe it, but I see it in how I show up. I'm a 1 quick start. So a lot of my visionaries are 7, 8, 9. And so I said, how do we in the moment when I try to throttle us and pull us back and maintain chaos and restore what we have, how can I meet you in the middle and how can you meet me? And so it's, we come up with a game plan prior to the tension or conflict, which then through that muscle memory, we can say, okay, we are now hitting the danger zone. We are in a danger zone together, but we've done the work in advance to see and recognize the behaviors so we can call it out with love, not as a weapon.
Yeah. And I think that's important too, because once you truly do know each other, you can also know and understand that you're coming from a place of love and respect, right? Like, I'm not intentionally trying to hurt you, but if you haven't established that, then that can be an immediate response. Like, oh, that hurt. That really, really hurt. And you think it was intentional when it absolutely wasn't.
Right. Another thing that you and I have spoken to this, and I love this. There is this traditional role of first in command and second in command. And what I found with every single one of my visionaries is there's wiggle room there. They may be really passionate about owning parts, right? So one of the things that comes up is like own culture. And I said, oh, wow, I feel like if we can define our roles and how it shows up, we don't step on each other's feet. And so we don't have to just take exact accountability chart box right out of the book and put it up on the screen. We can negotiate our roles and say, where are our strengths? How can I show up better? So that when we do get in there, we are clear on roles and we can say, that's definitely his or her sweet spot. I'm going to let him or her do it. And so that's another part of building trust is just using the tools to just get clear on expectations in our roles.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's really, truly like, and once you have that clearly defined, I love to describe it as a ballroom dance. When you have two people that are not clearly defined, like what is your role, what is mine, they're constantly stepping on each other. And I don't know about you, but when my feet get stepped on so many times, it hurts. It really, truly hurts, right? And you don't want to do it anymore. But also people around you don't want to watch it anymore, right? They're like,
painful.
Look at
you
that.
think you're doing it in private. You're not.
And that's such a great point. No matter how much you think it's happening in private, it is not.
It's there.
And the audience doesn't want to watch that, right? Your team members don't want to watch it. They're looking away. But when you're working together in sync, it is a beautiful ballroom dance, right? It's like gliding across the floor and people are like attracted to you and they're like watching and they want to be involved, right? I want to do that too. And so it's so important. It is just so incredibly important to be in sync and to know. I mean, if you think about dancing, everybody knows their steps, right? You know yours, I know mine, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
And if you don't know your steps, your lane,
you're stumbling, right? And that actually goes right into ride high, because what you just said was beautiful. When you are riding high, everybody knows it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we are smiling, we are laughing, we're getting stuff done, we're celebrating each other. Our segues are richer, right? We're really like sharing, we're excited. And riding high, like this is the time, and Jamie Munoz is so great at this, and her talk at FEM was about creating celebrations and like experiential things within the teams. And this is the time when you're riding high to dig into that. Like record that podcast that you wanted to do, or do that state of the company all excited, right? Because lean into that energy. It's really painful. It's like going against the grain. When you guys are embracing the suck or building trust, it's really hard to go against that grain. And so that's really a power of ride high. Is now is the time. This is the season to just like love out loud and really help avoid some of those stumbles later by just continuing to appreciate and validate.
Agree. Because I will tell you, one of the worst things the feedback that we would hear is, "Uh-oh, mom and dad are at it again,"
I
right?
hate that. Isn't that
Oh,
the worst?
that's just awful, and it feels really bad. And in fact, one of my visionaries, he and I were very close in age, so they would say, "Oh, the siblings are at it again," right? And it's like,
Wow.
oh man, like
Yeah.
that sucks to hear that. So,
That's exactly
you
right.
said, okay, so there's a couple of tools and things for staying in the ride high. What is one that you can share with us? How do we stay there?
So scale of 1 to care is actually one of my favorite tools in the ride high, because we're moving faster. So you start to see it accelerate, because, oh, we're doing this, and that is also how things get really dangerous and rocky, because it's like you're going a curvy road up the mountain, and all of a sudden you just gun it, and you're bound to spin out. And so the scale of 1 to care kind of brings us back in check. Hey, and the same pages are essential. I feel like when we are riding high, we skip our same pages more than when we're in the brace the suck,
Yeah.
right? Everything's fine. I don't have anything.
We don't need to meet.
Oh, it's fine, right? We're so aligned. But then what ends up happening is you spiral out. And that's really key. And I think that is the big one for me, is just keep coming back and keep checking where we are with the relationship. What we also find is we avoid conflict during this stage because we don't want to rumble. But what happens is a little baby cut becomes a gaping wound if the same behaviors happen over and over, and then we've never told them. We've never even said, hey, this is starting to bother me.
Yeah, that's very true. Oh my gosh, yes. I can share so many stories of times that I've seen that with myself and visionaries I've worked with, but also with my clients, like something so tiny turns into something so big because you didn't want to disrupt this great relationship, this great high that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and Nicole, so you've shared scale of 1 to care with me for a long time, and I really use it a lot. And it's funny because you shared the one where your visionary is passionate about, and I'm a 9 on this, but I will tell you, I've experienced before too, where as visionaries, we can sometimes get really animated, no matter how much we
you might be a 2. You might care very little.
And so I've seen it, right? I've seen where the visionary was like, hey, like this, and they're just passionate and they're sharing and they're sharing and they're sharing. And I'm like, holy crap, like this is a big deal. And I really need to be in this. And for me, I'm like a 2 or a 3 here. Like, I'm not so sure why we're so excited about this. But then I asked that question and they're like, oh no, like I'm really a 2.
You're like, what?
It's so animated and so visually passionate that you don't realize.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. You don't really care about this as much as it seems like you do. So it's a great way to also just check and see, where are you passionate? Because I do have somebody on the team that's a 9. So if we're only 2s,
then how do we bridge that gap? Yeah. I have one more favorite tool for this phase, and it's the levels of yes. And I don't know if you've heard this one before. So you're in a meeting and you're talking to visionary and you are really jacked up and you're like, and then we're going to do this. And I have this idea. Do you agree? And they go, that's a level 1 yes. And they do not intend on doing anything, right? So never trust a nodder. It's if you stop talking, I will say yes, right? No intention of doing anything. A level 2 is we should do that. Sure, we should do that, right? I call it the royal we yes. And that's so dangerous. That's me and my husband's biggest thing is when the we comes popping out. I'm like, who's we? Who's that? So it's a level, but level 3 is yes, I agree. I commit to this action by this time. And so now it's kind of a joke in some of my teams. When I get a level 1, I go, is that a level 1? And they're like, it's a level 1. I was like, okay, where does this go? Does this go on the issues list? Do we have to unpack it more? But it keeps us in that ride high because we're just being honest with each other. I don't value this decision or I don't believe in this as much as you do. So let's just say it out loud. And then we can rumble with the content versus the betrayal or the letdown, which is the next stage, the stumble.
And that is so true. What a great way to segue into that season, because that is true. And I've witnessed it so many times. I've been part of it so many times where it's not the actual decision that was made, but it was the lack of engagement, I guess, of I thought you were all in on this and you were really, truly just a maybe.
Level one.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's a perception of betrayal.
It
We
is.
are so aligned. We are so in lockstep and you didn't do it. And it's like, but wait, I never intended to do it in the first place.
Exactly. Or when you are a level 3 and they're a 1 and you've spent all this time, this energy, all of this effort into doing something, and then you complete it and show it and they're like, that's
Well,
great.
thanks.
Ah, wait a
Put it in
minute.
the file cabinet.
Yes, and it hurts, right? It's like, oh, like, and that's to me like where some betrayal can come in too, because here I was really like, I put a lot of time, energy into this, and I thought it was gonna be something amazing for us. And you're just kind of like, meh, and you just rained on my parade.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, hey friend, I knew we would have like an amazing conversation, and I'm so glad. So many times, I think a lot of people think that visionaries and integrators come together and it's just hunky dory all the time. So I think sharing this with people and letting them know like it is seasons, and things can like it's not a destination. Leadership and relationships are a journey.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful to share with everybody. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
also thank you for putting so much time and energy into really identifying them, so that we can learn from you and what to do, through each phase. Because you're right, we want to live in the high.
So how do we get there? And then how do we stay there?
How do we stay there as long as we can? But also if a stumble should happen, it happens, and it's you can recover from it. It takes energy, it takes time, it takes commitment, but you can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Okay, friend, I'm going to end this conversation with 3 rapid fire questions.
Oh, great.
So, hey, by the way, I have to say, we did not cry in our conversation, and I'm super proud of us.
We didn't jazz hands either. I feel like we should do that quick.
I know, right? We totally should have started that way. Keep it awkward, friend. Keep it awkward. I love it. I love it. I love you so much. So rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Well, you know me well enough to know what I'm going to ask is, honor, empower, inspire means so much to me. So who is a woman of a past generation that you want to honor?
Well, I have to say my mama. So she had 4 kids and then built a beautiful professional career. And then she just keeps reinventing herself in retirement. I think like I love that there's this whole idea of fixed mindset and I am who I am. But honestly, I just love to see women continue to just evolve and reinvent and be different versions of themselves unapologetically. So I have to honor my mom.
I love that. I love that. And that's such a great statement to make too. We evolve, we change all the time. And what a beautiful thing that we can do that. So
Absolutely.
love that. What about empower? Who is a woman that either empowers you and you're just every time you're around them, you're like, oh, love that. Or who is a woman that you hope to empower of today's generation, a woman who is in business today?
So without sounding like a total kiss ass, Kristie, you're literally the first person that came to my mind. And it really just about that courage, right? Just taking courageous steps. And Shannon Johnson has been on my brain and she inspired me to do something really cool. Like it's just what you and Shannon bring is this courage to create space for sisterhood. And you do it for female executives. Don't you cry now. The courage to create space for current female executives, that sisterhood. And Shannon is doing it for young girls. And so I'm actually going to work with my neighbors and bridge the gap between moms and daughters of late teens, early 20s, as they're going into their careers and saying, do you know who you are? And how do you guys work together? As well as how do you define who you are when you are going out to this world to define what you want in your life? So I've been inspired by all of you guys here at FEM, but in particular, Kristie, you and Shannon.
Thank you, friend. That is so kind of you. Oh, I wasn't going to cry, but you made me tear up. What about a woman of a future generation that you hope to inspire?
Kind of, maybe there's a recency bias, but what the work that I really want to do locally here and just really pilot this idea is these young women going out into college or the workforce and giving them a strong voice. I think sometimes it's so misled on how to show up, and you got to be loud, you got to be pushy or bossy, and you got to break the mold. And I said, or you can be your authentic self and have a really vulnerable yet confident voice. And I love humble confidence, like that whole idea of humble confidence. And I really hope to inspire future female leaders to be able to stand tall in their stories and speak with humble confidence as they enter the workforce and lead the future generations.
I love that. And I love that you brought up humble confidence too, because you were part of creating FEM's core values. And I remember that was so important to you. Like, we were like, man, we want to invoke like just this confidence in women. And you were so strong in saying, yeah, but it's humble confidence, right? Because we don't want to be arrogant and that person that turns people off.
Right.
We want to put out the right energy. So I absolutely love that, friend.
I love it.
Nicole, thank you. Thank you for today's conversation. It was fun, so much fun talking to you about the seasons and about who you want to honor, empower, and inspire. I love you, friend.
I love you too. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
Bye, Chris.
Bye, everybody.